and welcome to my channel. My name is Venus and today I'm going over all of the books that I read in the month of December. As normal, I start from my least favorite and work my way up to my favorite book of the month. There were actually no DNFs in December, but I did have two disappointing reads from authors that I was expecting to have 5-star reads from. So while I did have a couple disappointing reads that I was hoping to be 5 stars, I still will say I overall enjoyed all of these books. I do recommend them. There's no ratings lower than 3 stars, so this will be, for the most part, a pretty happy wrap up for December. The first book is The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. She is the author of The Dead Romantics, which I gave 5 stars to, and I was really expecting this to be a 5-star. There are so many 5-star reviews on Goodreads for this book, but unfortunately there was just something that I just did not connect with for this one. So in this one we are following Clementine. She is kind of at a point in her life where she's pretty sad. She doesn't want to let anyone in. She recently lost her aunt that she was very close to. They would travel a lot together. Her aunt had a lot of like cute little sayings that she kind of lives her life by, and she's just really missing her aunt. So Clementine inherited her late aunt's apartment in Upper East Side, New York, and she is now living there. She's working. I think she works in the editing and publishing field. I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure. And she's trying to, advance her career and just not worry or think about love. And her aunt always told her that this apartment was special, that it was like a pension time. While she is in the apartment, there's random times where it's 7 years behind. And one day when she goes home after work, she finds this random man standing in her aunt's kitchen, and comes to find out he is from 7 years before. And I think my issue with this book is I just really didn't connect with the characters as much as I did with Dead Romantics. The romance portion of this, I feel like it started very, very quickly. If you've been around my channel a lot, you know that I really don't love that much unless it's done in a way that is believable for me. And I don't know, for some reason I had a hard time, being very engaged in the romance for this. I thought the male character, he was a chef. I did like him, but there was something about Clementine that just bothered me. And so, like I said, never really connected with it. It is very sad at times. I would say if you have any triggers, maybe check that out because there was something that happened that I wasn't expecting. I did really appreciate the author's, she has like a reader's guide in the back of the book that kind of talks about where she was and what happened in her life to influence this book. And I really appreciated that. Overall, I'm giving this, I'll say 3.5 stars, and I'll probably round it up to 4 on Goodreads, but I was expecting it to be a 5-star like The Dead Romantics. So I was a little underwhelmed with this, but I'm still definitely going to read more from this author. Next up is Recursion by Blake Crouch, another book I was fully expecting to give 5 stars to. I've read his books Upgrade and Dark Matter, and I loved them both so much. Definitely an auto-buy author for me. But again, I was left a little underwhelmed with this one. It just became very repetitive in the storytelling, and I was starting to lose interest. In this book, we are following Barry. He is a New York City cop. He's had something pretty traumatic happen to him in his life with his wife and his daughter. And in the beginning, we are following him as he is trying to stop this woman from jumping off a building and committing suicide. And she's up there and she's telling him that she remembers a life that didn't happen, or her past husband doesn't remember her. This story talks about false memory syndrome, where people are all of a sudden remembering this whole other life that they lived very vividly, like real memories that they're having, and then they basically go insane and end up murdering them, killing themselves. It's very interesting, a lot of sciencey talk in it that at parts kind of lost me a little bit. We are also following Helena. She's a neuroscientist. Her mom has Alzheimer's disease, and she is dedicated to trying to find a way to preserve precious memories so this disease doesn't progress or affect so many people. And it kind of intertwines with the false memory syndrome. This is, overall, it's a great science fiction book. I enjoyed it, but it just wasn't as good as the other two books that I read by him. It became very repetitive. So once they kind of figure out what's going on and a way to, I don't want to give too much away, a way to kind of stop this false memory syndrome from happening. There is like a villain in this, and they're trying to stop him from using the technology that Helena has created. And it just becomes pretty repetitive because they end up going back multiple times in time to stop certain events from happening. And of course, there's always that risk of, you know, not tampering with the past, and trying to prevent certain things could have a ripple effect and other things can happen. So I enjoyed that part overall, but when they just kept going back and trying to repeat stuff, I lost interest. So unfortunately right now, this is my least favorite Blake Crouch book, but still a great read. I'm still going to give it 3.5 stars and round it up to 4 on Goodreads. Next up is a nonfiction book. I actually finished a nonfiction book before the end of 2023, and that is Outlive, The Science and Art of Longevity by Dr. Peter Attia, and I love this book. I don't typically rate nonfiction books, but if I had to give this a rating, I would definitely give it 4 stars. It's pretty chunky. It's very science heavy. I am a nurse, so I understood the majority of it and really got a lot of good takeaways from it. So in this book, Dr. Attia is talking about ways to live longer but healthier too. So you don't want to be in your 80s and 90s and not be able to perform your daily living activities such as bathing yourself, tying your own shoes, brushing your teeth, washing your body, which is bathing yourself, feeding yourself, just basic things that we take for granted now. So you may live to your 80s and 90s, but it's kind of not great if you're not able to do those things. And he talks about the 4 horsemen, 4 things that are the majority of things that affect our quality of life as we get older, or also things that kill us, which is cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, and diabetes. And I loved how he talked about ways to help prevent things as best you can. Obviously, there's some things genetic-wise, or, you know, especially cancer, Alzheimer's, where unfortunately there's just not much we can do, but he does talk about things that we can try to do to help minimize those effects or prevent them or push them out further, I'll say. And the biggest thing that he talks about, you would think it would be nutrition, which he does definitely speak about nutrition. I love that he didn't jump on like the keto or a specific diet. He did just mention overall just healthy eating. Alcohol is a big thing too, decreasing that or completely eliminating it because it does do horrible things to our livers. It is a toxin. Exercise was his number one thing that we should start to try to incorporate today, because that's going to be the thing that takes away things like bending over and tying your shoes, or, you know, tripping and falling. And if you break a hip and you have no muscle mass, you are going to have a really hard time recovering once you get older. So exercise was a huge part of this book. Walking, strength training, it's so important. And when you think about it, it makes so much sense, because if you are sedentary and you're not moving and getting strong as you get older, you do lose it. I found this an excellent book, especially going into the new year when we all have New Year's resolutions. I'm trying to get healthy. I'm also in the second half of my life, basically. So it's definitely time to try to live out the rest of my years as healthy as I can. So I highly recommend this if you are interested in books like this. Next up, I read Krampus by Brom. I really enjoyed this book. I was actually very surprised by it. It's long. It's like, I don't have it. I returned it to the library, but it's almost as big as like a textbook. And even when you open it, there's like 2 columns of text. It's long. I felt like I was reading it forever. I was really into the story quite a bit. I love that it had Norse mythology mixed into it. I honestly knew nothing about Krampus. I never heard of it before. I still haven't watched the movie. Hopefully I'll get to it at some point, maybe this winter, or next winter. We're in 2024 now, so next December, or this, oh Jesus, and later in December. I don't know, I found it really interesting. I'm still team Santa Claus though, because you just can't take 40 some years of holly jolly Santa Claus and make him into like this buff, like killing machine that he was in this book. But overall, I really enjoyed it. So Krampus is kind of stuck somewhere. He's been cast aside by Santa Claus, and he is determined to come back as the Yule Lord. And he's got his little minions out there doing his work, trying to get the red sack from Santa Claus. And there's a character named Jesse, and he is kind of a musician. He's down on his luck. His wife has basically left him, is living with this older man who's, I think he was, I don't remember if he was the sheriff or he's a police officer in this town in West Virginia. And she's got his daughter with her, and they're living with this older man who is is a dirty cop, basically. I loved that aspect of it because we follow Jesse and how he's trying to get his wife back, and then, you know, he's dealing with this cop and he stumbles across Santa Claus and Krampus's minions fighting, and the red sack gets lost and he ends up with it, and then it goes from there, and it is like the coolest little adventure. I had so much fun reading this. It definitely gets gory. There's a couple of cringy moments. There are horror moments in it, but overall I loved this book, and I could see me rereading it like every year. So I highly recommend it if you haven't read it and you're into horror and you don't mind seeing Santa Claus as very different than what you're used to. But yeah, I'm giving this one 4 stars. It also threw me off a little bit because it has Norse mythology mixed into it. So there's times where like Krampus was mentioning like Loki and Odin and just all these different characters that had me thinking about Thor. It was just throwing me off. I mean, this book was a trip. I don't know. I had a blast with it. Like I said, definitely recommend it if you are interested and that sounds fun to you. And my favorite book of December was Red Country by Joe Abercrombie. I mean, it's probably no surprise anytime I read a Joe Abercrombie book, it's going to end up being my favorite book of the month, and did not disappoint at all. While this is my least favorite of the standalones, I'll rank this one, then forgot what they were called. The Heroes and Best Served Cold was my favorite out of these 3, but still a great book. Giving it 4 stars. So in this book, it's set in the First Law world. I think it does mention how many years after like the events that happened in the First Law trilogy. I want to say it's somewhere between 10 and 15, but I can't remember for sure. But I remember it was specifically mentioned in this one, and we are following a couple characters from that First Law trilogy. I won't say who because, you know, it's the fun part about picking these up. I enjoyed it. I had a great time. We're following Shy. She has a bit of a dark past, and she's taking care of her brother and sister, and she's living with someone named Lamb, who is kind of like a stepfather to her. And on their way back home from being in the town, they find that their home was burned and her brother and sister are missing, and also one of her, I don't know if he was like a relative or I'll say uncle, was murdered as well. So they are on a mission to find out who stole her brother and sister. Shy is under the impression that Lamb is a coward and that he, you know, isn't going to be much of a help as they travel to find her brother and sister. But we find out Lamb has a bit of a bloody history himself, and I loved how that was revealed. There are some characters from Best Served Cold that are in this that I laughed. And that's the thing about Joe Abercrombie books. They're violent. There's usually some kind of war or fighting in it, and there's a little bit of politics, but the characters can be so funny to me, and it just makes me laugh. And I think that's my favorite book about his stories. His characters always just come alive to me, and it makes these books so easy to read. There's one character called Temple who is a lawyer. He's got like a lot of different trades he's had, but when you want to talk about a coward, he admittedly calls himself a coward and does things that make you go, really? But then he tries to come around and make it up to people when he does them wrong. And does it have, okay, so on the back, it does say Nakoma Casca. So because I didn't want to spoil it, but he's a pretty main character in this as well. And he was from Best Served Cold, and I thought his character was hilarious. There were parts in here that I was really laughing out loud anytime he was speaking. And the ending got me a little teary-eyed. So yeah, I love this book. I'm very excited to move on to the Age of Madness series. I hear it's even better than the First Law trilogy. So I am finally done with the standalones, and we'll be starting Age of Madness very, very soon. So that's it. Those are all the books that I read in the month of December, just 5, but overall I enjoyed them. You know, some of them were a little disappointing, but still they were very good reads, and I didn't have any DNFs, so that's shocking. As always, thank you for stopping by. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Let me know down below, did you have any 5-star reads in the month of December? I will see you guys again soon. See ya.